Welcome, Mr. Stuffleby. Yes. Thank you. And before we start the debate, if everybody could take a moment to turn off their phones, anything that makes any noise would be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. Well, first, I'd like to welcome all of our candidates on stage, please. Thank you very much.
I remember.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for your patience as we get started here this evening at University of Chicago.
Oh, yeah.
My name is Christina Tobin. I am the founder and chair of the Free and Equal Elections Foundation. We lobby nationwide for electoral reform, and we sponsor debates and help organize debates like the one tonight in front of you. I would first like to introduce our fine candidates here tonight, and I mean fine. They are here representing the people, all 7 of them, in my opinion. And we'll start off with Mr. Rich Whitney, down on the left end of the table, once again, with the Green Party of Illinois. We also have Mr. Michael White, with an independent running for governor here in Illinois. Dan Proft with the Republican Party. Lean forward, I can't see. I'm sorry. Lex Green with the Libertarian Party. Adam Andrzejewski with the Republican Party. Randall Stufflebeam with the Constitution Party. And William Doc Walls as an independent. Yes, please, thank you. I'd like to very much thank our co-sponsors this evening. This event would not be possible without all of you. We have our leaders up here in the front row, but the groups do consist of Students for a Free Society, Students for a Democratic Society, the College Republicans, College Democrats, and the student chapter of the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU. So I would like to thank them, please, for all of their hard work in putting this together this evening. Thank you so much. I would also like to thank a guy that's been with us since day one, Mr. Gary Franchi back there with Restore the Republic. He's doing our live feed tonight nationwide. Thank you so much, Gary, for being there for us from beginning to end. So the questions tonight that we will be going through, 5 questions, were actually submitted by each one of the groups that I mentioned before. Each individual will come up here representing their group and will be asking the questions on behalf of their group. During this debate, we will be using the cumulative format. The cumulative format consists of a 2-minute introduction and a 2-minute closing. There will be 5 total questions, of which each one was submitted by each of the student organizations co-sponsoring this event, this debate. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each question, and there will be a rebuttal statement of only 2. That will be for 1 minute. So I would like to go ahead and start this debate with our first question from Mr. Joseph. Introductions, right? I forgot it again. The introductions, I won't do this again. We held a debate earlier this year at Du Quoin. And so I want to start first and foremost with the introductions this evening from each of our candidates, starting with Mr. Rich Whitney with the Green Party.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Christina, and thank you to the Free and Equal and the other sponsoring groups. My name is Rich Whitney, and I'm the Green Party candidate for governor of Illinois. I'm a civil rights and employment law attorney from Carbondale. And I have a lot of experience in dealing with working people's problems in the workplace. But I do not claim that my own personal qualifications are what best qualifies me for this office. What best qualifies me for this office is you, the people who fight day in and day out for the sound public policy solutions that we know already exist, but which cannot get through Springfield or Washington because of these two institutional barriers known as the Democratic and Republican parties, what I refer to as the two corporate-sponsored parties. The fundamental problem in American politics today is that politics has become dominated by big money. The big banks, the giant corporations that fund the Democratic Party and Republican Party as institutions and their candidates, and they get the results that they pay for. Will Rogers used to joke, America has the best politicians money can buy. But today the joke has become on us, and because we're seeing the results. And after the U.S. Supreme Court's decision last week, we know it's only going to get increasingly worse. The Green Party is trying to change that and its candidates by forming a political party that does not accept corporate campaign contributions, a party that's based on principles of ecological wisdom, grassroots democracy, social justice, and nonviolence. And it's from those four principles that our policies flow. And that's why in this campaign, you can rest assured that this will be a campaign to really build government of, by, and for the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Michael White, Independent.
Hello, I'm Michael White. I'm the independent candidate for governor, and I can tell you about my wife and my son, and that we are an Illinois family, like many of you. I've served over 20 years in our nation's military, but the election is not about me. It's not about the other candidates, and it's not about party politics. It is about who we are as a people, a state, a nation, and it's about how we govern. We have to determine whether we are responsible individuals who demand an accountable government, or if we choose to relinquish some freedom, some liberty, and make government responsible for us. Well, I believe in America. It is the land of opportunity, and that the people who work hard, they should receive their reward. That I believe in Illinois, that we can build wealth in hand and heart and mind, and it's not government's role to take that wealth away. And I believe in the people, that people understand that community service means so much more than community activism. It's the service of helping your neighbor, being a member of the PTA, or going to church. So this is the type of Illinois we need to build. It is not about the campaigns. It's not about party politics. It is about taking back this state. And I would be honored if any of you would like to support me. Thank you.
Mr. Dan Proft.
Chris Christie in New Jersey. Scott Brown last week in Massachusetts. So we have a question to ask ourselves here in Illinois. Who is going to lead the revolution in this state? Because this is the year where we have the opportunity to do precisely that. It's not going to be the go-along, get-along Republicans who have, for the last 25 years, been complicit with horrific public policies advanced by Chicago Democrats that have destroyed this state's economy. And that's precisely what's happened. So my value proposition as a candidate for governor, a conservative Republican candidate for governor, is very simple. It can be summed up in two words: policy revolution. A complete rethinking and reordering of all of the big ticket systems in state government, not a single one of which is financially sustainable in its current form, not a single one of which serves the folks who pay the bills in this state, who finance a state government that they receive very little back from in terms of either benefits or services. And when I'm talking about big ticket systems, I'm talking specifically here about K through 12 education, Medicaid, how we invest in our transportation infrastructure, and our 5 state pension systems, and the tax and spend and borrow policies that undergird the whole thing. If you are not talking about radically changing the incentives presented and the obligations imposed by those big ticket systems where most of our tax dollars are spent, then you're just not serious about changing how state government operates in Illinois. And so it is not holding the line on taxes, and it certainly is not tax increases, which would be signing the economic death warrant for this state. It is cutting structural taxes to reward work and investment because we'd like to see more of it. It is not one-time spending cuts or politicians' promises. It is statutory spending caps that permanently restrain the public sector from crowding out private sector investment. So the question that I am putting to Republican primary voters and anybody who's going to consider voting in a Republican primary, maybe for the first time, is a very simple one. Are you ready to turn Springfield upside down? And if the answer is yes, then Dan Proft is your candidate for governor. Thank you.
Mr. Lex Green.
I want to thank Free and Equal for inviting me to this debate. I am Lex Green, the Libertarian candidate. I am a lifelong resident of Illinois. I grew up on a farm in central Illinois. I've lived most of my life in Bloomington. I lived for a number of years in the northern suburbs of Cook County. I am running because of something I believe in. I'm not running for political ambition. What I believe in can be summed up in one simple concept: small government. What I envision for Illinois is a state with a balanced budget, but not balanced because we capped spending, not balanced because we issued more bonds or we used some spending gimmick or raised taxes. I would like to see an Illinois that balances a budget because we reduce the size of government. We need to provide for the general welfare of the people, but that doesn't mean giving handouts. That means providing an environment where people are responsible for their own lives and where they are free to enjoy the benefits of liberty. We need to reduce the size of government by rolling back programs or eliminating them. We need to stimulate the economy not by spending, but by removing or reducing taxes. And we need to get rid of corruption by implementing term limits and fair ballot access laws. Illinois needs a strong dose of freedom, not bigger government.
Mr. Adam Andrzejewski.
Great job with the last name, Christina. It's a rare day when my last name gets pronounced correctly, but I just want to tell everybody here in the room what it means. In Polish, it means governor. Thank you to each of you for coming out on a cold and snowy winter night. I'm proud to be a conservative Republican. I just want to get a sense of the room by a show of hands. How many people voted for Barack Obama? Okay. How many people think that Illinois is running well? This is a unique election. Everybody gets it. I am the one outsider running against 5 insiders in my Republican primary. I want to give you a sense of who I am. I've been married to my wife, Carrie, for the last 10 years. We live in Hinsdale, where we're raising our 3 daughters, Ellie, who's 5, Molly, who's 3, and Emma Kate, who's 1. I didn't grow up in Hinsdale. I grew up in Herscher. And I grew up walking beans, detasseling corn, and baling hay. And I would rather run for governor in Illinois than bale hay. In 1997, my brother and I, we started a business from scratch. We grew it to $20 million of sales, employing hundreds of people. I then founded an organization called For the Good of Illinois, and we posted $1 billion of public spending online, giving taxpayers respect. I'm running on the toughest policies in this race. By executive order, I will put every dime online in real time, from the top of the appropriation down into the subcontractor level where the corruption is systemic. The second executive order, it's action. It's a forensic audit, top to bottom, of the $55 billion spending budget in Springfield. A forensic audit is a deep audit. It's an evidentiary audit. It's an audit that follows the money and an audit that holds up in court. We'll save $3 to $5 billion. John Tillman of the Illinois Policy Institute says that a forensic audit is needed policy. Our new chairman, Pat Brady, says that Andrzejewski, with that forensic audit, we must do that. It's a new era of government. I'm asking for your help to root out the waste, the fraud, the corruption, and the abuse.
Mr. Randy Stufflebeam.
Hi, my name is Randy Stufflebeam, and I am the Constitution Party candidate for governor here. And as much as Adam would like to indicate he is the outsider, we are the true outsiders. He did qualify at the outsider in the Republican Party, but I believe that if we are going to see true change in Illinois, we're going to have to see a true change in who we elect. It has been both the Democrats and the Republicans who have been responsible for the state that we have today. I want to thank Christina, the Free and Equal, and I really want to thank you students who have also co-sponsored this. We started out with an unprecedented debate held in Des Moines where you see most of the same candidates present down there. You've seen for the very first time Republicans, Democrats,
bringing about a loss of 300,000 private sector jobs. Many disadvantaged in Illinois also endure an unfair educational system and do not have the financial ability to simply move out of state like the now educated or the more fiscally stable that seek a better system just across state lines. How are you going to ensure that Illinois has the incentives to stifle out-migration while implementing economic and educational empowerment for the disadvantaged who have grown up here? Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rich Whitney.
Okay, well, that's a twofold question, so I think it deserves a twofold answer. What we're talking about in the first is how we're going to create economic opportunities in the state of Illinois. And that's not something that reduces itself to a soundbite, but I will tell you this. It starts by fixing our budget problem. It starts by fixing a broken system in which we tax the poorest 20% of Illinoisans at more than twice the rate of the top 1%, and then we wonder why our state is broke. This is when you combine all taxes together. We need to turn that around and create a more progressive tax system so that we can ensure stability to our state government so that our state government can start to do the things that it needs to do to turn things around, including in higher education. I believe that if third world countries like Argentina and Chile and others can provide free higher education to all those who academically qualify, I have to wonder why we cannot do that in the richest nation in the world. And I would like Illinois to become a state that does provide that to all qualified residents. It is absolutely absurd that in order to go to college today in the state of Illinois or elsewhere in the United States, you have to incur $20,000, $30,000 or more in debt and spend the first 10 years of your working life paying that off. We need to turn that around first of all. Other things that we need to do to help grow our own businesses and create economic opportunities in Illinois include the implementation of a single-payer healthcare system in Illinois, which would be a positive incentive for bringing businesses back to Illinois and helping us grow our own. Another thing that we need to be doing in Illinois is that we need to be encouraging alternatives to the corporate model. We have a lot of shuttered factories, runaway shops in Illinois. As a matter of fact, there were over 700 of them created just in last year alone. We lost 50,000 more manufacturing jobs last year. Those factories, I believe the state should use the power of eminent domain to reclaim those facilities in the name of the people of the state of Illinois and allow them to be turned over to worker-owned enterprises as an alternative to the corporate model, creating new economic opportunities.
Thank you. Mr. Michael White.
Just the other day, Pat Quinn said that jobs follow education. I don't believe that to be true. I believe that education follows jobs. And I think what you spoke about speaks to that. That people are graduating and they're leaving the state. So we have to bring jobs back to Illinois, and I think everybody up here will agree to that. There's no doubt. We have to pay attention to the companies that are struggling now. We have to make sure they stay here. We have to make sure we create that environment for jobs, and we have to work on the future for jobs for Illinois. Increasing taxes will not do that. It works just the opposite effect, especially in the long term. The problem in Illinois is we have billions of dollars in debt. So we have to fix that issue as well. Our growing deficit, our unpaid bills, and our unfunded pension system. So it'll be interesting to see, because I will never say no taxes, because at the same time, that's one of the tools a governor will have to use possibly when push comes to shove. Again, it's that jobs, education follows jobs. So in order to get, for people to stay here, to increase people's wealth, we have to bring jobs to Illinois. We have to put people back to work. It has that also deals with the environment of the state itself. Who's going to come here with that type of deficit? Who's going to come here with the type of corrupt government we have? From Chicago to Springfield. The people of Illinois don't even trust their own government. How is a new company going to even want to come here to do that? And then if we're talking about using eminent domain to take over someone else's property, again, I think it's government's role stepping into people's private lives in what they own, in their own wealth. And how can we create our own wealth if government is always taking it from us? And we have to help people who are, like you said, under limited means. We have to build a platform for them to build wealth, to own their home, and not pay property taxes, which tries to take that home away. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dan Proft.
Well, with due respect to Mr. Whitney, we're at the home of the guy who said that there is no free lunch. Milton Friedman, for those. God, I hope everybody here knows. For gosh sakes, a couple things here. To give you the background to the depths to which this state has sunk. It's not just that college graduates are not coming back, which is part of the problem. Illinois is second only to New Jersey in exporting college-bound high school seniors. Folks are leaving the state and they're not coming back. But also, we're not attracting college graduates. There was a study done by the Federal Reserve Bank of New York in 2007. Where do college graduates choose to live? They rank the states 1 to 50. You know where Illinois ranked? 45th in the nation. Behind? West Virginia. Behind a state that for the last 4 decades has elected a member of the Ku Klux Klan as their senior U.S. senator. That is the depths to which the U.S. to which this state has sunk in the context of the nation, because college graduates do go where the jobs are, where the job opportunities are. Let me take a step back here. You have K through 12 systems in this state, all over this state, not just here in Chicago, but in Rockford, where the high school graduation rate is 40%, Quad Cities, Peoria, Decatur, East St. Louis, Cahokia, that are abject failures. They are failing to live up to their moral and fiduciary duty to the students under their charge. And so what we need to do at the K through 12 level, because this is where it starts, by the time they get to college, well, they're not going to college. By the time they get to high school, it's too late. We need to give low to moderate income families in this state the same opportunities that the more affluent and the more politically connected have. And I'm the candidate in this race, the only candidate in this race, who's proposed a statewide school choice program to do precisely that, to change how the money flows in K through 12 and who gets to make spending decisions so that opportunities are extended to people who have had the doors of opportunity closed on them to this point. The only way that you change the outputs of our system is to change the way the money flows and who gets to make spending decisions. And that has been fundamental, because in the last 10 years, general fund spending in this state has increased at 8 times the rate of population growth. So it's not total money, it's how it's spent and who's getting to spend it.
Thank you. Mr. Lex Green.
Prosperity solves a lot of problems. And if we solve the problem of our declining prosperity in Illinois, we will solve a lot of the education problems. First, let's address the business issue. Government is not the solution, it's the problem. And by trying to subsidize certain businesses, they are putting a drain on those remaining who are not getting subsidized, and the average taxpayer like you and me, making a climate that's really unfriendly for business overall. So rather than trying to subsidize a single business, we need to have a business environment that's good overall, for all businesses. It's impossible to subsidize all businesses. I mean, that seems self-evident. We can't afford it. So why would we target any business sector? So the only solution left would be take away taxes and regulations that are barriers to job creation and to businesses coming to the state. That would be the first thing to bringing the prosperity back. Once you've done that, then you have to deal, as you said, with the problem of affordability in the colleges. Well, again, the prosperity will help that. More money in the hands of the taxpayer, more ability to pay for school. What I do see, though, going back to the government being the problem, is that anytime they get involved with regulations and trying to help with costs, they tend to drive the costs up. Only free markets drive costs down. So the MAP program, for example, wildly popular because people have their hands out for it. However, it takes away from other programs, or it takes money out of taxpayers, making affordability an issue overall. So we need to get the government out of the way, bring back businesses, and let competition drive down prices in the schools.
Thank you. Mr. Adam Andrzejewski.
Being on the campaign trail for the last 11 months, first declared candidate in the Republican or Democratic Party in this race, nearly in every single room on the campaign trail, people tell me that if this state declines any further, they're going to leave Illinois. And according to ALEC, over the course of the last 10 years, 731,000 people did just that. So the first thing that we have to do is no new taxes. And I'm endorsed by the National Taxpayers Union of Illinois because I'm also running on $10 billion worth of spending cuts, where dollars start following people in need in this state, people without political power, and they stop following the corruption, the graft, the insiders, and the lobbyists. I understand from my own personal experience that government does not create jobs, politicians and their plans don't create jobs, entrepreneurs and small businesses create jobs. And this is my story. My brother and I started a business from scratch and built it into $20 million of sales, creating hundreds of jobs. That's the end of the story. In the third year, we nearly lost that business because we ran out of money. And but for another dime's worth of taxes, regulations, and fees, we'd have been out of business. That business today has over 200 employees, is in 5 states, and is nearly $30 million or over in revenue. We're a high cost of doing business state, high cost of employment state. So what we need to do is reduce the cost of employment. We need to get government and fees out of the way. How do we do this? Tort reform. Because the plaintiff's bar runs state government, every single family in terms of product costs, you and me, we spend $3,500 extra per year. We need tort reform. We need to become a merit-based economy. Texas created more jobs than any other state in the past than all 49 states combined in the last 5 years. They give their workers a simple choice. You could be a part of the union or not part of the union. We need to reform workers' compensation insurance. Our neighbor Indiana, 2 times less expensive. We're a high cost of employment state. As your governor, I'll work to reduce those costs.
Mr. Randall Stufflebeam.
The question revolved around 2 primary issues which are inextricably combined together because of one factor, and that's the money. In Illinois, we have the lottery system. The lottery system was brought into Illinois for a purpose. That purpose was to subsidize, not replace, but subsidize education here in Illinois. Since that time, education has continued to go down the tube. We've not seen an increase. In fact, we have seen a decrease in our education, in our graduation, and the quality of education that we see here in Illinois. It's due to one major factor, and that is the lack of accountability. We've got to start holding people accountable to where these funds are going, first of all. Secondly, in 2006, previous administration has acted on allowing illegal, undocumented, those who are not contributing to our tax-based system to get in-state tuition. This means our tuition costs for Illinois legal citizens are going up, paying for those who are not contributing to the system, who are actually a drain on the system. We must also fix an unfunded pension system here in Illinois, where folks are making more in retirement than they ever did when they were working. It's interesting, I sent my daughter for a semester to Olivet Nazarene University, a private school, private university here in Illinois, a college that operates in the black. They are not funded by state or federal funding. Yet here in Illinois, we have colleges and universities that cannot operate, and they are funded with all the state and federal programs, in addition to a lottery system that was supposed to subsidize education. We've got a huge problem with where the money's going, and we need accountability.
Mr. William Doc Walls.
Thanks for that fine question. That question goes to the heart of the issue of quality of life. People want to live someplace where they're comfortable, where they're stress-free, where their needs are being met. And oftentimes it is the place where they're educated, where their family lives. People move away when they have to in most instances. They leave their loved ones seeking better opportunity. And that's true whether it's immigration, or whatever. Communities are built around parks, schools, and libraries. We have to ensure that we have those things because those ensure a better quality of life and they're great for the family environment. But we also have to make certain that we have a solid educational system. We have to provide a superior public school education for each and every individual child, and that transcends the development of modern buildings with state-of-the-art equipment and facilities which are conducive to safe and potentially productive educational environments. We have to teach our children reading, writing, math, and science for certain, but we also have to teach them the arts, the humanities, we have to teach them civics, we have to teach them sportsmanship and scholarship. When we do those things, we will begin to attract the kinds of businesses that are great for our economy. But it has to be purposeful. It won't happen by accident. We have to set out with purpose to attract those kinds of businesses. I believe in grants for local businesses to help them grow, even before we begin to offer tax incentives to bring new businesses into Illinois. When we find that correct mix of a commitment to education and a commitment to building our economy through attracting and maintaining businesses here in Illinois, we'll get it right. But right now, we have a governor, Pat Quinn, who doesn't understand how important it is to attract businesses and maintain businesses here. He's too busy running for office and not concentrating on effective governance.
Thank you. We will be rotating.
Can I do a
rebuttal?
rebuttal? I mean,
Yes.
I'm
I
not
would
really a
too.
rebuttal. I'm just going to rebut myself. But I just want
Please
to
go
explain, I'll put a little bit more detail on what I'm talking about with my statewide school choice program. What I am proposing is that any child who qualifies for the free or reduced school lunch, federal school lunch program in this state, so up to 185% of poverty level, would get a scholarship equal to the state's contribution to that child's education. And then the parents could take those dollars and send their child to any school they want, public, private, parochial, charter, other religious affiliated, whatever. To give you an order of magnitude on this, there's about 2.1 million children in K through 12 in Illinois. About 920,000 qualify for the free or reduced school lunch. And those are the children that are disproportionately being relegated to schools we know will fail them. Schools that will not set them on the path to be successful independent adults and open up the Pandora's box of all kinds of other social costs we all bear because children are not prepared to compete in our global digital economy. Now this is modeled after a system that I know everybody in this room is familiar with called college. Because at the collegiate level, Stafford Loan, GI Bill, Pell Grant, it's attached to you as a individual, as a student. Schools compete for students. We have some of the best colleges and universities in the world. We have some of the worst K through 12 systems because they're insulated from competition. We need to stop funding teachers' unions and take the fight to the teachers' unions who are the grand defenders of the status quo in this state.
Thank you. Mr. Rich Whitney.
Yes, I'd like to use one of my rebuttal opportunities to take an opportunity to try to distinguish myself, I think, from all of the candidates here, or at least most of them. What we've heard is variations in a theme. Government is the problem, right? Government can't do anything right. How often have we heard this? We've been hearing this for the last 30 years, ever since the so-called Reagan Revolution. And I think that's fundamentally wrong. What is true is that when government is captured by narrow self-interests that have a stake in either looting it or destroying it, then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. First they defund the schools, then they point at the schools and say the schools aren't working, we need to privatize them. They screw around with the Medicaid system, they underfund it, they see government can't do anything right, they can't pay their bills on time. They don't provide adequate funding for public transit, then they complain when the trains run on time. We've had 30 years of defunding and underfunding the public sector. What is true is that when government is adequately funded and administered by people who have an incentive and a desire to make it work, people who are representing you, the people, government can and will do good things for the people. It is only when it is under the control of people who don't want it to succeed that government can't work and can't do anything right.
Thank you. Adam Andrzejewski.
Yeah, I don't agree with that at all. Let's look at the reality in the state of Illinois. local and state government, not including what we all send the federal government, which is significant. Local and state government in Illinois tax and spend $70 billion a year, and we're a state of 13 million people. What that means for everybody here in the room, your share of that is $5,500 a year. Family of four, $22,000. Government at all levels needs to go on a diet. The public sector is literally cannibalizing the private sector, and there's no money left for an entrepreneur to grow jobs. Lech Walesa comes into Chicago on Friday, and Lech Walesa stood up to communism, stood for freedom and individual rights, and he's supporting my campaign because he understands that we can't have a command and control economy, that government can't pick winners and losers. If I had to go as an entrepreneur in front of a government bureaucrat and ask them for a grant to fund my company, they'd have chosen my competitors. We were never the cool company. We just had the right idea.
Thank you. So moving on to our second question, we will be rotating throughout this debate. Second question will be answered by Michael White and rotated down. The question will be asked by Mr. Mike Kenstowitz, hope I pronounced that right, from the ACLU, University of Chicago. Thank you, Mike.
Good evening. Gay and lesbian families are denied many benefits and protections by the state of Illinois. Under the Illinois Religious Freedom Protection and Civil Union Act, individuals may enter into civil unions that provide the same legal obligations, responsibilities, protections, and benefits afforded by the state of Illinois to spouses. Do you support this bill? And if you do, will you give a firm commitment to passing it during your first term in office?
I do support that government should be limited. It shouldn't be involved in our lives. So I do support the fact that I do agree with traditional marriage because of the tradition that's been put in place. But at the same time, I agree that there are people out there that don't have a traditional family, and they should not be denied the same civil rights as anyone else. And so I do agree. I can't say that what the legislature is going to put on the table of the governor, but if that were to come across the desk, I would sign it, because again, government shouldn't be involved on what we do in our personal lives and shouldn't be involved in who we marry or who we decide to share our lives with.
Dan Proft?
No, I'd oppose it. I'm opposed to gay marriage and civil unions. I believe the only legitimate definition of marriage is that between one man and one woman. We have a Defense of Marriage Act on the statute books in Illinois right now, as do 40 other states. I think as you've seen the referenda to try and codify gay marriage in other states over the last several cycles, I think every single one, there's been something like 2 or 3 dozen efforts, and every single one has lost because it just doesn't reflect the social mores of the society. This is not to say that people should otherwise be discriminated against. This is I believe that every human being is created in the image of God and entitled to the same inalienable rights that are provided for in our Constitution. But I don't think that includes a redefinition of marriage into something that it simply is not.
Lex Green?
Ultimately, most issues concerning gay rights are not about marriage or about their living arrangements. It's about benefits. In the case of a traditional marriage, the government has stepped into what should be a personal contract between two people, a personal relationship that was sanctioned by God. It should not be sanctioned by the government. That's a tradition that some people like to uphold. What that does is it creates a special class of individual, usually the wife, sometimes the husband, who has special considerations that other people don't have. Why are there benefits that bestow upon one person that they may not have earned? Well, it's because the government has implemented a special class of citizen called the spouse. So what we're looking at is we want the government to come in now and take a bad idea and implement it into the gay community by saying we're going to create a special class of gay citizen to match the special class of heterosexual citizen. I think, again, that this comes down to benefits. If an insurance company wants to give benefits, they will give benefits. Of course, I'm opposed to Social Security, so I'm not really advocating for any Social Security benefits to come down to any partners. So this, again, is a case of government involvement where it really isn't appropriate, and I am not for that law.
Adam Andrzejewski.
Well, there's a real difference of opinion here between my Democratic competitors, Governor Pat Quinn and his challenger, Danny Hines. Pat Quinn says he would sign civil unions, and Danny Hines says he would sign the gay marriage bill. I have a difference of opinion with them. I believe marriage is between one man and one woman. I would veto both bills. I think the people of Illinois need to be heard on this issue. I don't think any changes in this area should come from the legislature or the courts like in Iowa. I think the people need to register thumbs up or thumbs down on this, like the referendum that has been placed on the ballot in 31 states. And 31 times in a row, including California, when the people speak, they say no. Status quo. Keep it the same. Illinois needs to put that referendum on the ballot. Now, it's interesting. A couple years ago, they got the signatures. But it was people that were for gay marriage and civil unions that challenged those petition signatures and got it tossed. They weren't willing to hear from the people of Illinois on this issue. We, the people, need to be heard on this issue. Now, it's a big issue because the legislature just may create the change, especially with a Democratic governor. I'm running to prevent that because I'll veto it. But the bill sits on the floor in the last legislative session on the House floor, and the Democrats thought they had the votes on it. If they get just a little bit more aggressive, that's going to change Illinois forever.
Randy Stuffelbeam.
Interesting that I would say no, I would not support it. I am for traditional marriage, but I am also about liberty, your freedom to do and to choose your own life partner as you see fit for yourself. It's not my place to make that delineation. That's your place, your business. I would say no, somewhat based on what Lex had said earlier. It's all about the bennies. Where do the bennies come from? Let me tell you where the bennies come from. They come out of our pockets. The government cannot give you what the government does not first take away. The Constitution Party and my campaign specifically call for the repeal of the 16th Amendment. Most of you recognize that amendment as being the income tax amendment. It is the amendment that authorized our federal government to tax our income without regard to source, without regard to enumeration or a census, and without regard to apportionment, which means without regard to representation. We have an unfair tax system in the United States that I believe is unconstitutional. Because we have the government that now has the authorization to have this income, they can give it back in terms of bennies. Bennies for married couples. Well, eliminate the root cause and this issue goes away because heterosexual marriages will no longer have the bennies. So I am about liberty. I would vote no, not because I'm opposed to you doing whatever you want to do and have the bennies, but because I believe carte blanche across the board, we need to get rid of this unconstitutional system to begin with.
William Doc Walls.
Very interesting question. Thank you. Government is a hierarchy of respected relationships interacting to create enforceable laws. And government's mandate is to provide for the common defense, ensure civility, and to take care of those who are weak, afflicted, infirmed, or disoriented. Our government has reached far beyond its authorization at this point in time. But having said that, we as a group of people have a responsibility to promote cultural and diversity sensitivity amongst people of all ages, races, socioeconomic backgrounds, all religious persuasions, all sexual orientations, all physical and mental disabilities and limitations, because none of us is any better than the rest of us. I support civil unions, and I support the right for one person to transfer that which they have upon their demise to someone else. I also support their right to share their benefits with someone else, if that's the person that they choose to share it with. It's like when you adopt a child or adopt another family member. It's your right to do that. And so as long as it doesn't cost the taxpayers anything extra, then I am certainly for it.
Thank you. Our third question will
Oh,
be asked.
excuse me?
Oh, excuse me.
We are rotating, aren't
Pardon
we?
me. Sorry, Rich. Been a long week.
That's okay.
Mr. Rich Whitney with the Green Party,
Yes,
please.
thank you. Yes, of course I would support such a bill. I would also support a right to marry bill that would cover everyone. And it's a basic matter of equal rights under the law. That's what the principle is at stake here, and that's why the Green Party has been in the forefront of the fight for the right to marry. Some of the first cities that have adopted it has been cities that where the Green Party has been involved in the administration. So yes, we are actually leading the charge on this issue, and rightly so. You know, when we hear people more from the right side of the spectrum get kind of upset about, well, this is going to somehow sully the traditional view of marriage as being between one man and one woman, you have to consider that what the state calls marriage has nothing to do with that. What government calls marriage is basically contract law and property law and how the property is divided. Frankly, most of what marriage law consists of, in according to the state, has nothing to do with marriage. It has to do with divorce. All right. So yes, gays and lesbians should have equal right to marry, equal right to get divorced, under the same under the same rubric, under the same laws. And you know, if we put this into place, this doesn't in any way affect any religion from defining marriage the way it sees fit. What we're talking about is the realm of government, not the realm of religion, what it calls marriage. There's no reason for people to get upset about this. It doesn't intrude on any religion. This is about equality under the law. That's the principle. That's why I would support such a bill.
Thank you. Any rebuttals? Okay, moving on to the next question, which will be from Mr. Bryant Jackson Green of the Students for a Free Society.
The Illinois budget deficit, now estimated to be in excess of $12.8 billion, has left the state in a near fiscal crisis with no clear resolution in sight. Governor Quinn has called for, while Illinois still recovers from the economic recession, a 50% increase in the state's income tax. Do you support the suggested tax hike or any tax increase at all? And if elected, how would you commit to reining in state spending and balancing the budget?
Dan Proft?
No, I don't support any tax increase. In fact, I'm the candidate in this race who is calling for structural tax cuts. I would go the other way. Cut the personal income tax in half, cut the corporate income tax in half in this state, eliminate the state estate tax, which is also a tax on business, particularly family businesses. As I said at the outset, if you want to see more work and investment in this state, you have to reward it. Raising taxes is signing the economic death warrant of this state. Understand what's happening here. This is not a revenue problem, as Pat Quinn said. Remember Pat this past summer when he was saying that Western civilization would come to an end if he didn't get his tax hike? At the same time he was saying that, he proposed a fiscal year 2010 budget that had a 6% spending increase in it. I mean, who is he kidding? These people in Springfield have no credibility because they don't deserve any. They are running systems that are street hustles. It is a scam. We pour more and more money into these big ticket systems that I mentioned and get less and less in return because all of the money goes to serve one purpose: secure jobs and guaranteed pensions for patronage armies in Chicago and Springfield who, in return for their secure jobs and pensions, prop up the established political order. That's the scam. State government isn't set up to educate kids. It's not set up to provide health insurance to low-income individuals. It's not set up to get you to work on time or at home with more time for your family. It is set up to prop up a patronage armies that prop up the political order. So if you want to unfix these fixed systems, these systems that are wired against people who play by the rules and pay all the bills in this state, you have to restructure them. There are structural problems in state government. These systems cannot produce, are structurally incapable of producing producing what they promised to produce. So you have to completely rethink how the money flows and who gets to make spending decisions when it comes to the core missions of state government. Again, we are 48th in the nation in job creation in the last 25 years because we are a high cost of doing business state. You have to send a signal the world over that Illinois is going to be serious about encouraging small business growth. And you start by rewarding work and investment and restraining the public sector from crowding out private sector investment with profligate spending.
Lex Green.
I'm glad Dan agrees with me that we need to reduce income taxes, and I think he's got it half right. I think we need to eliminate the income tax. I am committed to reducing or eliminating taxes wherever possible, and I will not approve or condone any tax increases or fee increases and so on. The problem we have in Springfield, as well as in my town, my county, and in the federal government is, of course, overspending. And it's been a long time in coming, and I hear a lot of people say it's going to be a long time in fixing. However, we're to the point that the longer we go down the wrong road, the more drastic the remedy is going to have to be. And the answer is not at this time, when inflation is eating up the value of our wages, to heap more taxes upon the citizen. That is going to make a bad environment for the citizen, and is only going to encourage and reward the failed policies in Springfield. So we are going to have to drastically attack the spending in Springfield, reduce it, eliminate it wherever it is possible, and as soon as we possibly can get that spending under control, we have to reduce or eliminate taxes, and that's my stand.
Adam Andrzejewski.
Well, families have all cut spending here in Illinois. I know mine has. Businesses, small businesses have all cut spending. When is government in Illinois going to cut spending? As we discussed earlier, it's $22,000 for every family. Family of 4 here in Illinois, and we just can't afford it any longer. So 2 executive orders, and it gets us nearly halfway there. Open up the books and audit the books. Why is open books important? Because we don't know where the $55 billion worth of spending is, and William Holland, the auditor, who gets his marching orders from Michael Madigan in the legislature, can't even tell you how many state programs are within the 83 state agencies, and when he reported back that information, they did not give him the authorization to go find out. We don't know how many checkbooks are in state government. The General Assembly says there's slightly more than 600. The Treasurer's website says there's slightly less than 700. If we don't know the number of programs, if we don't know the number of checkbooks, is it any wonder we're in the financial chaos that we're in? Now, a Kansas governor did a forensic audit, and she saved her taxpayers $1 billion. And if a Kansas Democrat can do it, certainly an Illinois Republican can do it. Texas saved 8. We can save 3 to 5 billion. All of the next number of cuts need to be negotiated with the Chicago Democrats in the General Assembly. But it's on the table. Any agency that's not performing on its mission, like the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity, their mission's to grow jobs. We spend $1.4 billion in that agency. They've had their turn. I'll zero it out. Any grant that we can't measure, put a performance to. 63% of the state budget is grants. We'll zero that out. Public sector unions. At a certain point, it's payroll, perks, and pensions. It's greed. We can't afford it any longer. They need to come back to the table. Pension reform. State workers, 2 tracks. Work a little longer, pay in a little more, have a little less lucrative cost of living adjustment when they retire, and it saves $165 billion over the next 35 years. The capital bill. $31 billion of pork barrel spending. We're nearly insolvent. I've got bad news. Being broke, we need to scale that down and do a prudent $5 or $6 billion bill. This is the only reasonable policy in this race.
Mr. Randall Stufflebeam.
The question came out as near crisis. I'm thinking we're well beyond near. I think we're there. I think we are a state in crisis. I think we're a country in economical crisis. And there is only one word that will get us out of it, and that's accountability. Over the past several years, and many of you remember, especially you up here in Chicago, near $5 gas prices. We weren't quite so expensive down in the lower part of the state. But this state experienced more revenue than what was budgeted for because of those high gas prices. More taxes came in than what they had actually budgeted for. And guess what? We went deeper in debt. Did you know that there is a constitutional, an Illinois state constitutional mandate to have a balanced budget? And yet, we still see ourselves go further and further in debt, and that's due to a lack of accountability. I already alluded to the fact that Mr. Holland had found over $170, $80 million unaccounted for. That's nearly $250 million. No idea where it went. Not one single head rolled, not one single indictment was made in that endeavor. We need to lower taxes. Lowering taxes stimulates the economy. We don't need more taxes to go out so the government can stimulate us with our own money. We need lower taxes to help our communities, to attract businesses, to do the jobs here in Illinois that we can do and attract people to come back instead of forcing them out of the state. We need to have a zero-based budget where people have to justify the dollars that they are spending within the state. Not have a budget of, hey, I've been getting $1 million, I need to spend another $1 million this time. Start at zero, justify where you are, and we'll have a change.
Right, Mr. William Doc Walls.
Very good question. You guys have been on your P's and Q's. You know the right questions to ask at this point in time in history because these are the issues that we have to deal with in our society. No, I'm not for additional tax increases. Right now, Illinois is 41st when it comes to tax obligation per capita. But more importantly, we're the 6th most regressive taxing state in the nation. That means mid to low income people are paying more than their fair share. So what we need is comprehensive tax reform that will stimulate our economy and foster full employment. Full employment has to be our goal. Every single Illinoisan should have a job. Now, we know that macroeconomists will say that full employment is not possible. Well, in this global economy that we live in, it is a possibility. Certainly there'll be unemployment somewhere, but let's not let it be here in Illinois. What we have to do to lower our rates and our prices and lower our cost to taxpayer is include everybody in the scenario when it comes to cutting. We've asked state employees to take furlough days, which amounts to a tax or to a wage cut. We've asked administrators to take cuts in pay, but we haven't asked big businesses who do business with the state of Illinois to reduce their profit margins. We have to include them in the equation. We have to use not-for-profit organizations more because that saves about 20%. Philadelphia did it really, really well when they put in their infrastructure for Wi-Fi. We also have to have naming rights. Naming rights would generate about $10 billion right here in the state of Illinois per year. And I'm talking about things like the Thompson Microsoft Center. Microsoft would pay huge dollars to have their name associated with that. The Dan Ryan Expressway could be renamed. Nobody cares about Dan Ryan anymore. We have to generate money that doesn't come from taxpayers.
Mr. Rich Whitney.
Okay. This question defies a 2-minute answer. So before I go further, I want to refer people to a handout I have on the table that talks about this in more detail in the budget deficit. You know, first of all, let me say I fundamentally disagree with my Republican and Libertarian opponents. And we hear this at campaign time all the time. Elect me and I'm going to cut spending. You know, I'm going to cut your taxes, and that's how we're going to close the deficit. Let's get realistic here, folks. You cannot close a $13 billion structural deficit by cutting spending, and if you did do that during a recession, it would be insane. You would be cutting over 125,000 jobs during a recession, and there would be a further spillover effect in the economy. You cannot solve the problem that way. Now, we hear a lot about, oh, we're spending too much. Illinois ranks 45th in the United States in state spending, despite having the 5th largest population. Okay? That's not the, maybe that has more to do with why we're 48th in job creation in comparison to the other states. we need to think about this a lot more carefully. Look at the Center for Tax and Budget Accountability and the work they've done. Illinois, with its 3% flat rate, is the lowest flat rate of any income tax in the United States. What do our neighbors have? Indiana, 3.4%. Missouri, 6%. Kentucky, 6%. Wisconsin, 6.75%. An income tax increase, of the kind that Quinn and Hines are talking about, is not anything out of sorts with what our competing states have. But I agree with Mr. Walls. It's not just the tax increase, it's how it's structured. We need to implement tax fairness. We need to be taxing the right people. We need to move from one of the most regressive systems to a progressive system, which is what I'm advocating, so that people making $60,000, $70,000 a year or less actually pay lower or the same taxes they are now, and we try to make it more of a graduated system. The other way we need to approach this problem is that I'm the only candidate in this race that advocates the formation of a state bank as another way of raising revenue, but my time's up. Can't talk about it anymore right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. Michael White.
Well, I'm a very visual person, so this is our problem, I think, isn't it? And this is what we're all trying to solve, isn't that right? I think that's close. And this is where I have an issue when people say no taxes. It's not, that would be the last tool I think I would use as governor, but I won't pull it off the table because it is a tool. And we have to solve this giant problem. And what I've noticed in the past in Illinois is when someone says they're not going to raise taxes, or does that mean you're not raising fees? What does it mean you're not, what else are you not going to do? Does that include everything? And if you're not going to do it, are we still going to mandate that this be shoved down to the county level? And now are they going to raise taxes? And if they don't want to do it, do they shove it down to the city level and then they raise taxes? But somebody's going to get that money. Somebody's going to get that money, and they're going to get it somehow. So even though somebody says we're not raising taxes, I, as a normal citizen, I don't believe you. We do have to reduce spending. There's no doubt about it. But pulling taxes off the table is not the solution. It's one of the tools a governor may have to use, as well as borrowing money. Neither of those would be the first thing that I would look at, would be the last thing I would look at. But we do have to reduce spending, and that includes bringing jobs back to Illinois, and I think we all know that. But if we don't bring jobs to Illinois, reduce spending, I don't know any company that's going to say, wow, this looks like a great deal. I want to go here and start a business today.
I'd like to use one of my rebuttals.
All right, first in line.
Specifically for you, Mr. White. Unfortunately, we don't have to raise taxes. There are many other new revenue streams that we could explore before we get to the point where we raise taxes. You raise taxes as a very last resort. You don't go out campaigning and say, I want to raise taxes, I want to raise taxes. I believe that that is our first option. That, for me, is the very last option. We're in a unique position right now, given the state of our failed economy. We're at the point where we could exercise benign disinflation, meaning specifically reduce the cost and general prices, including real estate, commodities, services, utilities, tangible goods, intangible assets. We could reduce those costs because look at the grocery stores. They're in a food price war right now. Real estate prices are down. Wages are down. Cost of gasoline is down. Someone indicated that it was almost $5 a gallon. It's down. Prices are down, but they're artificially down. It would behoove us to keep those prices purposefully low so that we can be more competitive than our neighbors around the country.
Thank you. All right, Michael White, please.
I did say use taxes as a last resort, and I believe the question was, would you pull taxes? Would you agree to tax or not to tax? I will not pull that off the table. And our economy in Illinois has not failed. It has been sabotaged by a decade of mismanagement of our funds. So let's not always want to blame the economy or George W. Bush or Barack Obama for what's happening in Illinois right now. It's from a decade of misuse, misspent money, and we're continuing down that same path again, and hopefully we'll put some new people in office who will actually cut some spending.
Still Randy? Okay, Randy Stufflebeam.
Yeah, You know, the whole issue about being able to cut spending and reduce the deficit boils down to patching the holes where the money is running out of this ship faster than we can bail the water out. Okay, we've got to patch the holes, hold people accountable. We've got a sinking ship that is due to a lack of accountability. We've talked about spending. Yes, we do need to cut spending. We need to put a cap on spending. But the 800-pound gorilla that nobody's talking about is the fact that Illinois is the second largest state employer, second only to California, and we are not the second largest state in the union. We need to cut back the frivolous, mismanaged departments that we have in the state of Illinois. We need to end the corruption. We've got to cut back on the pensions. I don't have my glasses on. We've got a pension where people are making more money now than when they retired. We've got to change the system.
All right, Mr. Rich Whitney. Then let's.
Yeah, I'd like to use I'm blowing my second rebuttal here, but I want to use it anyway because this is such a very important question. Having disagreed with my Republican and Libertarian opponents, I want to talk about an area of agreement, particularly with Mr. Proft, and that is when he refers to patronage armies. This is part of the problem. Don't get me wrong, just because we need to restructure our tax system doesn't mean that I'm against looking for ways to cut spending. There are very important ways to cut spending. One thing we need to look at is these so-called member initiatives, commonly known as pork. Another thing we need to look at is misspending where there are ghost jobs in state government created by patronage. And who better to lead the charge on that than a new force in Illinois politics, a Green Party that doesn't have a dog in a fight and can actually implement the kind of clean sweep that we need to see. I'd like to say a little bit more about my state bank idea. When the state borrows money right now, and it's having to borrow billions, where does the money go? We're paying interest to consortiums of private banks, the very institutions that have brought us this economic ruin. Why not create a state bank like North Dakota, one of only a couple of states that is not struggling with the deficit problem, but actually has a budget surplus because they have their own state bank and invest in their people there at home? We can do it here in Illinois.
Mr. Lex Green?
Well, I would like to address one of the more difficult issues here that Rich brought up. He said there's 700 million or 1,000 jobs. I can't remember what was the number, but there's a lot. Pardon?
125,000.
125,000 jobs that are people that are on the public payroll. It came to light to me not too long ago that the top 5 employers in the state are state agencies. This is top-heavy government. We are going to have to make some difficult choices at some time. Now, I wouldn't say we lay everybody off the first year, and of course, a lot of those people are going to be retained anyway. That's not going to be everybody laid off, but we are going to have to cut 10 to 15% the first year just to try to balance the budget before we can even think about making substantial cuts. And I am sorry for everybody who is employed by the state who is going to lose their job, but we can no longer afford big government.
Thank you. You can clap, actually. After each statement, if you would like, feel free to. All right, so moving on to our fourth question, which will be from Miss Ann Tenuta from the College Democrats at University of Chicago. Thank you, Ann, for being here today.
Good evening.
Good evening.
With the Obama administration's announcement to close Guantanamo Bay in Cuba came the proposal to sell the mostly vacant Thompson Correctional Center to the federal government to house Guantanamo prisoners in Illinois. At the beginning of this month, an Illinois Legislative Commission voted in favor of the sale, and community members have supported this decision as well. Democrats have rallied around the prospect of creating thousands of jobs and bringing up to $1 billion in federal dollars for Illinois through the sale. Are you in support of this decision? And if not, how do you propose making up for these jobs that will not be created and these funds needed to address our growing deficit?
Thank you, Ann. We'll start off with Mr. Lex Green.
Well, first of all, I am opposed to selling that prison. I think that the best government is the most local government. I personally have questions as to why we have an empty prison at this time anyway. If we have overcrowding, as appears to be the problem from Governor Quinn's recent actions of trying to quietly secret them out of the existing prisons, maybe we should use them, that prison, for the purpose it was intended rather than selling it to the federal government. I am also not happy with the idea of bringing people who have been denied habeas corpus and have no legal status, no charges having been filed, onto Illinois soil, because that opens up some very serious legal questions. The federal government should address that while they're in Guantanamo, or return them to their countries, or take them to world court. But they shouldn't be brought here, because now we have to decide what charges are going to be filed, what jurisdiction they're in, and so on. So there's a number of very complicated issues involved. The central question was, do I approve that sale? I wouldn't approve that sale. As far as the jobs go, again, I'm not for the government being the main stimulus behind creating jobs. As much as I dislike the fact that there is a depressed area around there, and also in a lot of places in southern Illinois, what we need there is more tax relief, not more government interference.
Adam Andrzejewski.
Well, there's two questions here, and obviously I'm running for a stateside office as governor, but the federal question is, should terrorists be allowed to use the rights and privileges of our legal system on American soil? And I resoundingly say no to that. We should keep the terrorists over in Guantanamo off our shores. Another is a process question at the federal level. Obama ran on transparency, and he lied to you. And this is a perfect example of the lie in action. It's the Chicago Mayor Daley Mixfield method of government. It's no transparency, it is no public scrutiny, and it's moving too fast on the process. This legislation that Congress gave Barack Obama the right to bring those terrorists to Illinois was inserted in the 1,600-page omnibus spending bill at midnight. The legislature and the members of Congress didn't even know what they were voting on. The stateside question, and this is a perfect reason why you should elect an outsider to be your next governor. You and I built Thompson Prison back in 2001 for $127 million, our tax money, and it's lied vacant for 9 years. I learned at that hearing in Sterling that if we'd have closed Statesville, a 19th century prison that's expensive and overcrowded and unsafe, and brought those prisoners to Thompson and opened Thompson, not only would we have created public safety for the prisoners and, quite frankly, for the guards, we'd have alleviated overcrowding, but we'd have saved the taxpayers of Illinois $90 million as well. There's only one reason why Statesville is open, and it's because of Chicago politics and patronage and power. We need an outsider as governor. I stand ready to lead.
Randy Stufflebeam.
This question actually opens the door on a multitude of other questions. The first is bringing in detainees who are foreign to these sovereign United States, who will, and we have seen demonstrated, be brought into the American justice system, will be given American rights and privileges, which they do not, because they are not citizens, should not be afforded. This creates an entirely insane situation, which, due to the fact that we've never declared war, we don't have prisoners of wars, we've got detainees with special rights and privileges. This is a morass that we need to get ourselves out of. The question as to why we should sell it to the federal government, like was proposed, why don't we just open it up and put prisoners in our overcrowded system into this particular environment? Another question associated with the fact that these are terrorists is a security question. Does it pose a security threat to Illinois, and I would give a resounding yes. We have seen terrorists committed to the destruction, and they would have no compunction but what to come in and use this as an opportunity. Self-funding prisons is another thing that I would stand for. Why should we become double losers? When crimes are committed against us, they're put into prison, and now I have to continue to fund them. A Stufflebeam governor administration would create a self-funded prison system to take the burden off of the taxpayers. So we can create jobs, we can lower tax burden to the citizens of Illinois, and provide a better security system for Illinois rather than bringing detainees and giving this system over to the federal government.
All right, Mr. William Doc Walls.
The United States is the most over-incarcerated nation on the planet. And it's a sad day in Illinois when we look to prisons as a form of economic development. When we look to prisons as a means of helping people to work out their financial difficulties. We've got to do better than that. We've got to create jobs. We have to attract new businesses to areas like that. Every single place in Illinois that has fertile soil has purpose. Every place that has open space has purpose. We just have to be more aggressive when it comes to defining what types of businesses will go in those areas. Our goal has to be to someday close the prisons here in Illinois and create a comfortable living environment so that everybody is safe and so that we're living in harmony with one another. You cannot bring people here to the United States who've been forced to confess through torture and then expect them to be able to go through our judicial and penal system. You can't expect that to happen. So it's an unstable proposition from the outset, and I am certainly against it.
Mr. Rich Whitney.
I'm in favor of the transfer. You know, I've listened to two of the candidates on this panel talk about, well, that's bringing terrorists to U.S. soil. Isn't that begging the question? We have this tradition in our American system, American values, called, innocent until proven guilty. And these are people who are detained unlawfully, contrary to the Geneva Conventions, under this creation known as the military commission system and the creation of this new category of enemy non-combatants. Not, held incommunicado, not charged. Look at the real history of Guantanamo and what's actually happened there, where many innocent people were just caught up in the sweep and held under these conditions for 4 or 5 years before the United States funded said, whoops, guess you're not really a terrorist, you can go home now. I mean, this is absurd. And I'm in favor of the transfer. It's not a matter of whether they get the same rights under American law, it's whether they get the same rights under the Geneva Conventions and established international law. That's what we're talking about here. In addition, I would take this opportunity to point out that the issue was never really Guantanamo. It was what's happening in Guantanamo, the systematic violations of human rights, and the Obama administration is playing a shell game with that. They've made the issue, let's close Guantanamo, while the same kinds of abuses are happening in Bagram prison in Afghanistan. It's not the physical place Guantanamo, it's the military commission systems and the degradation of our own American tradition of upholding and being a champion of international law as we did at Nuremberg. We have gotten away from that. We need to address the real issue if you're talking about that. Now, having said that, I fully agree with one thing that Mr. Wall said, and that is we need to get away from the prison industrial complex just as the military industrial complex. That is a poison. One of the things that I would propose as governor is we need to end the so-called war on drugs. We're spending millions and millions in prosecuting, incarcerating people for victimless crimes.
Mr. Michael White.
I would not sell the prison because I believe in state sovereignty, and I have no interest in the feds getting into the state of Illinois any more than they already have, first of all. A lease might be another issue, but I would not sell the prison. We obviously do need prison space. We're always talking there's a shortage. The other issue comes into play when the legislature and the governor decide this is what they want to do. They haven't what funds are they getting from the federal government for increased airport security? Are they getting funds? And how long will those funds last? Are we getting local funds for security for the local police and the state police in that area? To me, that is another huge issue. If we're not addressing those issues at the same time he's making this crazy deal to sell part of the state, he's doing us a huge disservice. Because once the federal government has that prison, they can determine to put in there whoever they want and affect the security of that area. And if they're not beefing up local police on with a long-term plan, there's always going to be an issue.
Thank you. Mr. Dan Proft.
Yeah. It's interesting. Let's understand what's actually happening here, right? This is Chicago Democrats here covering the behind of a Chicago Democrat in D.C. who made a campaign promise he had no idea how to fulfill. That's what this is. Do you find it odd that none of the other 49 governors in the country are saying, no, don't buy Thompson. Come to our state. Buy one of our prisons. We want the terrorists to create all those jobs and the wonderful milk and honey of a couple thousand correctional officer jobs. It's nonsense. It's a scam. That's what it is. Pat Quinn, also, it just kind of in addition to all of the legal problems with this, I've read the Illinois Facilities Closure Act. I don't see where Pat Quinn has the authority to sell a state asset by executive fiat any more than he has the authority to sell the Thompson prison any more than he has the authority to sell the Thompson Center. This needs to go through the General Assembly. This process needs to be slowed down. Additionally, I know Bill Holland kind of takes a bad rap here, but let me stick up for the guy, and he's a Democrat, so I'll show my bipartisanship. He actually puts together some pretty good reports. He did one end of August that found that our state's 28 prisons are currently 32% over capacity. So, okay, you want to bring Thompson online and get an ROI for the money we spent, good idea. Let's use Thompson to relieve overcrowding in our existing prisons. It lowers the correctional officer to inmate ratio, which makes the prison safer, saves us tens of millions of dollars we're paying in overtime costs. So we can use it to send folks there to relieve the overcrowding in the other systems, and we can send Chicago politicians there too to round out whatever additional space is left.
Before we go to rebuttals, if any, I would just like to remind every candidate how many rebuttals they have. Mr. Rich Whitney, 0. Mr. White, 1. Proft, 1. Lex Green, 1. Adam Andrzejewski, 1. Randall Stuffelbeam, 1. And Doc Walls, 1. So, Rich Whitney, you're the odd one out there. So, okay, any rebuttals?
Before I might take my opportunity to rebut, how many more questions do we have left?
We have one more question, thank you. We are on our 5th question.
Well, I'd like to take this opportunity
Okay.
to rebut. The reason is that in Illinois, Dan talked about 33% overcrowding, and interestingly, my mic is not. Take the other one. Let me take you. Thank you. Is this one going to work? Oh, okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Thought there was a conspiracy.
Of course you did.
Right. As Dan had mentioned, there's 33% overcrowding, and what's interesting is that 30 to 35% of all inmates are inmates that had been inmates prior. 30 to 35% recidivism, meaning they committed the crime, they go to prison, they get out, they commit the crime, and by golly, I liked it in prison, so I'm going back. There's a problem in the system where the system, crime doesn't pay. Actually, I think maybe it does. I think it's about time we in Illinois make sure those who commit the crime begin to pay for their crime, and I am all about seeing that restitution is made in light of all of this penal part of the system. Make prisons unattractive to go to, make them self-sufficient, and will reduce the cost of the taxpayer's burden overall.
All right, any more rebuttals? We're moving on to our final question this evening. And this question comes from, mighty fine question, from Mr. Craig Johnson with the Students for a Democratic Society.
All right, this question is in response to last week's Supreme Court decision in Citizens United. So some say that this decision establishes a new era of corporate personhood where business interests can spend freely to influence elections, while others claim that money is speech and that therefore donations of any size are covered under the First Amendment. What are your thoughts on this decision, and what kind of legislative response do you think could be possible under the Illinois government under your governorships?
Thank you, Craig. We'll start with Mr. Adam Andrzejewski.
Sure. I believe money is speech. I'm a reformer running to reform state government. I hope somebody on my agenda, which I published right from the beginning, 15,000 words of simple solutions to solve the long-term and generational problems of this state. I hope somebody sees that agenda and in the waning days of this campaign writes $1 million check to my campaign. If you put caps on that, that's not an option. Money is speech. I come at the problem from a totally different angle. Spending caps at the federal level have not worked to end corruption at the federal level. Washington, D.C. is more corrupt than any single state in the union, including Illinois. What we need to do is take public spending decisions out from being cloaked in the privacy of the back room. We need to, for one thing, we need to end the Freedom of Information Act request from citizens. Lisa Madigan rewrote the Freedom of Information Act here in Illinois. She doesn't comply with the request 42% of the time within the 7-day window. On the rewrite, she tightened it to 5 days. Every single public document needs to go on a website just like the Sunshine State of Florida. Spending decisions, all of it needs to go online in real time. Bob McQuillan joins us today. He's a new guy running for office on new ideas. And Bob opened up the check register of Geneva Public Schools. And what did they find? They found 111 employees with purchase cards on spending that racked up on an unaccountable basis $1 million. We need to take public spending decisions out from the back room. We need to bring it out into the sunlight so we can see it. That's how you end public corruption. We need to bring accountability into the system, not cap what could amount to real reform from real reformers.
Okay. Mr. Randy Stufflebeam.
Contrary to what Adam has said, that money is speech, my opinion is money trumps speech. Money is not a free speech issue accorded to the citizens of the United States as given to us by our founding fathers in the Bill of Rights that give us that freedom of speech. I believe money trumps speech, and unjustifiably so. I believe if we want to see true campaign reform and eliminate the corruptive process of this campaigning process, there's one very simple way to do that. I believe in, as a Marine, I believe in the KISS principle. Everybody know what the KISS principle is? Keep it simple, stupid. The simple process is if you can't vote for me, you can't fund me, period. That means you can't run campaign ads on behalf of the campaign. If you can't vote for me, you can't fund me. That means nobody in another state can override the people's choice here in the state of Illinois. If you're running for a county position, somebody from another county cannot influence that county. There's no reason why that should be allowed in these United States of America. I believe keep it simple. If you can't vote for me, you can't fund me, period.
I agree wholeheartedly. Corporations don't vote, people do. You have to try to purify this system. One of the things that we have to have is public campaign financing. When we move to public campaign financing, we eliminate the need for candidates to consistently run for office and fundraise and compromise themselves and compromise their integrity. It's out of control already, and it's getting worse. James Madison warned about factions when they were forming this country. And factions are now those things that we call special interest groups, the special interest groups, the pharmaceutical companies, and others who rack up big dollars at our expense and then have legislation passed that benefits them and protects them and buffers them will only benefit from this new ruling. So I think that it's something that we have to push back against, but we have to eliminate the need for politicians to consistently run for office and consistently compromise themselves and consistently beg. We also have to have transparency. We need to know what people's motives are for producing commercials, promoting or discouraging you from voting for one candidate or another. There needs to be greater transparency in that regard, but we have to move towards public campaign financing. Thank you.
Rich Whitney.
Thank you. A fuller response to the Supreme Court's decision may be found on the homepage of my website. I issued a response the next day at whitneyforgov.org, so I invite you to look at that. The legal fiction of a corporate personhood is exactly that. It's a legal fiction. The word corporation appears nowhere in the Constitution. This idea that a corporation can be a person was an invention that appeared in a head note to a Supreme Court decision in 1886. And as Tom Hartman, radio talk show host and author, pointed out in a book on corporate personhood a few years ago, the head note wasn't even written by the Supreme Court justices. It was written by a clerk who happened to work at one time for one of the railroads that was involved in the case. This is how we get stuck with this idea of corporate personhood. But there are ways that we can fight back. You know, the fundamental problem, and this is something the Green Party talks about a lot, and this is why we and our candidates do not and still will not accept corporate campaign contributions. And that is that we need to realize that the corporation is something that is created by human beings. It's a creation of government, and human beings and government can take it away. Okay? It used to be that if you go back 150 years, states used to charter corporations for a specific purpose because the ability to operate a corporation is a privilege. It's a right to operate a business without any social responsibility or any legal liability. Right? The people are not personally liable. That's the whole idea of corporations. But states used to charter them and limit them. But what has happened over time is that instead of states controlling our state governments through the people, through the state government controlling corporations, corporations now dominate government. That needs to be flipped around. We need to enforce our state chartering laws. We can say, you, the Supreme Court, yes, you said corporations have a right to free speech. Well, guess what? We, the people, through our government, determine whether corporations have a right to exist in the first place, and we can tell them we're not going to charter or license you unless you agree not to interfere with the political process. That's how we're going to solve the problem.
Michael White.
Adam said money is speech, and I guess that leaves me with a very small voice. I don't know about many of you. But he does talk about transparency, and I agree. We as the people of Illinois need to know where money is being spent, how it is being spent, and that is true. But I think we also need to have it for candidates. I think every candidate on that state site should have their own dedicated web page that shows everything that they're doing easily. The current system, it's there, but it's not as easy to be seen. It should all be real time. You do something, you accept something. In today's age, that can be put out there, and everyone can see it right away. And it really comes down again to voters. It's you that are going to make the real reform. We've got Quinn, Hines, $3.1 billion, I think, or it was what I saw, or 3.1 million probably. I'm probably got my number wrong there. That's what they're raising this time? So that's what a little guy like me has to go up against? You're going to see the commercials. People are saying, oh, where's your commercial? I'm never going to have a commercial. If I get a newspaper ad, I'm doing good. But you, the voters, have to make that determination. Are you going to vote for the guy who's buying it? Or are you going to vote for somebody who's really trying to change the state?
Dan Proft.
Well, money is speech, and the Supreme Court held as much in Buckley versus Aleo. They, of course, allowed for contribution limits, which was a mistake, but money is speech. You know, look, corporations are evil, right? Yeah, bad. Yeah, corporations. What about labor unions? Are they good? Because one of my opponents and Adam's opponents, Kirk Diller, just got $250,000 from the teachers union. What do you think they're buying? Quality schools? No, they're buying the status quo. The real power base in this state and in this nation is not, the corporations that you like to kind of rail against, erecting these boogeymen. It is public sector unions. They are the ones who benefit from government. But fundamentally, this whole conversation about campaign finance reform is so wrong-headed. You miss the whole point when you talk about $2,500 limits or public financing. You know who has public financing? New Jersey. They've eliminated corruption, haven't they? How's that going? Look, P.J. O'Rourke said it best. As long as buying and selling is controlled by legislation, the first thing to be bought and sold will be legislators. That is the system. But it is not about the money on the campaign side. It's about the money on the public sector side. That's what they're all after. So if you want to fundamentally change the influence peddling that is endemic to the political system, particularly in Illinois, but nationally as well, limit the amount of influence that politicians have to peddle. In other words, diffuse power away from central governments and to local communities, and even more to the point, individual families. That's how you fundamentally change the power structure in this state. It is not by limiting contribution levels. What makes, especially so capriciously, $2,500 limit's good, $5,000 is bad, $10,000's worse, $5,000's okay, $12,000. I mean, it's nonsense. It is numbers on a dartboard. You're arguing about you're not arguing about anything qualitatively different. You're just arguing on the margins by what you think, by your own personal predilection, should be the limits. But it does nothing to fundamentally change what is endemic to the system.
And Mr. Lex Green.
First of all, I'd like to say I agree with the Supreme Court on this. If you want to know what the money's used for, or how desperately it's needed in the process, try running for state office. And some of us without as much support will tell you that it costs a lot of money to play this game. The problem isn't with how much money you have. I mean, I would like to have a TV commercial. We all know there's a price for that. Actually, believe it or not, I've heard people give me a menu of prices. If you want city council, it costs $5,000. If you want to be a state representative, it's going to cost you $15,000. If you want Senate seat, it's going to be $2 million, unless it's a contested seat, and so on and so forth. And it sounds kind of gross or unfair, but when you start buying yard signs and commercials and so on, I can see the reason and the rationale behind that. The problem comes not in how much money is being funneled into these campaigns. The problem comes with is how the influence is applied. And the influence is applied through the re-election process. In other words, if you give me $1 million, and please, anybody, I'll be glad to take it, it only gives influence over me if I want to come back and get reelected. Because if I'm not looking for that reelection, then I'm free, basically, of any further strings. Yeah, I can say thank you, and you can cry about it, but basically, unless I'm coming back begging you for more, the influence is mitigated. So I believe a better approach would be term limits, which takes away that pressure to please the donor, and it basically takes the whole issue of free speech out of it.
And any rebuttals on that one?
I've got a
guys?
rebuttal.
Okay, Doc, go ahead.
I mean, the purpose of contributing is because you want good government, you want sound fiscal policies, you want the unpolluted opportunity to effectively compete for business. It shouldn't be to take advantage of the weak, afflicted, infirmed, and disoriented. And oftentimes when major corporations spend millions of dollars, it's because they want legislation or they want an advantage. Well, we expect our Supreme Court would recognize that and avoid that at all costs. But having said that, in as much as they haven't, we still have the last say. And the reason we have the last say is because with transparency, and we can demand transparency, we can then protest through boycott. And when we see corporations that are abusing their advantage, financial advantage, we can then fight back and dry up their resources. And that's what we have to do as a people. We have to be as equally committed to ensuring that there's fairness in this process as they are to gaining an advantage.
Any other rebuttals? Okay. Rebuttals we have left are from Michael White, Dan Proft, and Lex Green, and Adam Andrzejewski. One of each. Okay, so moving on to the very end, we're going to do our closing statement. And we'll go ahead and start with Mr. Randall Stufflebeam on that. So thank you very much.
As I said in my opening statement, I have one word for Illinois, and that's accountability. You've heard me state that throughout the process. The problem is accountability. We can talk about policies, we can talk about programs, we can talk about all these things that we're going to do, but if we have no accountability, it means nothing. And we have seen that demonstrated in both the Republican and the Democrat parties. Benjamin Franklin said, the very definition of insanity is this, to do the same thing over and over and over again and expect different results. Folks, if you want to get something different, you're going to have to vote differently. And I suggest to you that as long as we have a Republican or a Democrat governor that is in the machinery, I don't care how outside they want to say they are, they're still a part of the system that has destroyed this country and is destroying this state. We must get a true outsider. And if you don't elect me, look at one of the independents or my other opponent, the Libertarian candidate, as a true outsider, the only outsiders that do not have to bend to the duopoly that is controlling our state and our country. If you want something different, start voting different and take a look at a real option and take the opportunity to do something like they did in Massachusetts.
I agree with Randy. We need a real movement here in Illinois. This is really a referendum on the will of the people of the state of Illinois to say no to corruption once and for all. On the heels of the Rod Blagojevich fiasco, and with Pat Quinn coming in and doing many of the same things. Many of you can go home and Google $15,000 Pat Quinn, and what will come up is that Pat Quinn was demanding that special interest groups and trade associations that wanted to meet with him had to pay $15,000. And that's after he took office on the heels of the Rod Blagojevich situation. So he's shown that he is actually no better in terms of integrity. Integrity is an absolute commitment to truth, veracity, and fair play. And that's not what Pat Quinn stands for. He's become a machine Democrat who's committed to one thing, and that's Pat Quinn, promoting his own career. So it's time that we say no to politicians like that and strike out and determine that we're going to vote for somebody different. I represent a clean break from the past. That's why I'm glad to run as an independent in this race, so that I don't have to go to the Democrat Party and ask for their endorsement and ask for their support, and in the process carry their baggage, those same old habits that they've had year after year after year, election after election after election, session after session after session. It's time we do something different and show people that Illinoisans have the fortitude, have the integrity, have the commitment to creating a better Illinois for our children and our children's children. Thank you very much.
Rich Whitney.
Thank you. I agree with Mr. Walls. We need to build a movement in order to change things in Illinois. And we in the Green Party have been doing just that. It's a real movement. And I've been involved in this movement for 14 years in trying to build an alternative political party that truly represents the people instead of the power of the multinational corporations and the banks. And by the way, it's true, not all corporations are evil. But that's not the point. The point is that they have become too powerful and unaccountable to the people. and that they're domineering the political process, and they have no loyalty to community. They only have loyalty to the shareholders, right? They have no loyalty to communities. That's why they'll take tax subsidies, and they'll take grants, and they'll take other funds from the public trough, and then as soon as they're done using a community, they'll shut down the plant and go overseas. They have no loyalty. That's why we need to hold the corporations and the banks accountable. And that's why we need to build a movement and a political party that is serious about building government of, by, and for the people instead of government dominated by big money. And that's what we're doing in the Green Party. And that's what we've done in the Green Party. And that's why of all the candidates on the stage, I am the only one that you can look at that you know right now is going to be on the November ballot, because we have built this movement and built this party to do exactly that. We have established ballot status in Illinois. We have a number of great candidates running, fighting for the same goals. You know, I'm often asked why I want to run for governor, and I'd like to remind you what the preamble to our Illinois Constitution states, that our government was formed for the purpose of eliminating poverty and inequality, assuring social and economic justice, and providing opportunity for the fullest development of the individual. I agree those are good goals for government. Problem is we have institutions that currently control government that don't care a bit about those goals. If you elect Rich Whitney governor, if you elect the other Green Party candidates in this race in 2010 to get into government, we will again adopt and fight for those goals of government as stated in the preamble to the Illinois Constitution. Thank you.
Michael White.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the Free and Equal folks for putting this together, and thank you guys for the questions. And really thank all of you for taking the opportunity to come out on such a wonderful snowy evening. I have faith in our Creator. I have faith in the people of Illinois, and I have faith in actually our ability to solve our own problems. And maybe after today, you might have a little bit of faith in me. And you can see that I'm not the polished politician that's run across this state for the past decade and has ended up in Springfield and later on jail. So keep that in mind. But like many of you, I too have a voice, and I just want to be heard. And I believe, you know, if you believe in limited government, if you believe in fiscal discipline, individual responsibility, and government accountability, then we do have a voice, and we do need to be heard. If you believe that America is the greatest country in the world, and that we as citizens actually know what's best for ourselves and not government, then we do have a voice, and we can be heard. And if you are ready to support someone like me so we can take back this state and change what's going on there, I need your help. I have to go out and get 25,000 signatures starting March 23rd. And I can win, and I can win, and I can win, and I will be your voice, and we will be heard. I'm Michael White, independent candidate for governor. Thank you.
Dan Proft.
So, Randy, you want to see what happened in Massachusetts happen here. I believe they elected a Republican. Did they not?
Republicans that did it.
Yeah, okay. All right, take it easy. Look, first of all, I want to thank Free and Equal too, and all the student groups that participated. I mean, I think these things are actually cool. You know, you don't get a lot of time, particularly on the trail, to kind of deal with ideas like state banks and price controls and command control economies and all that. And I disagree with Rich Whitney on a lot of stuff, but I love the robust debate. It kind of reminds me of the old Bill Buckley firing line, where you get a lot of broad perspectives and you can have a real conversation. So I appreciate that and respect what you guys are doing. Look, the value proposition of my candidacy, like I said at the outset, is very simple. Policy revolution, completely rethinking and reordering these big ticket systems that I keep speaking about. We do know where the money is going. These are the systems that consume most of our tax dollars, but they're not producing what they say they're going to produce. So this is why I say that Illinois isn't broken, it's fixed. They're producing what the Chicago Democrats want them to produce, which is, you know, the secure jobs and guaranteed pensions for patronage armies. So we need to completely recalibrate and rethink how these systems are set up. You need to understand it is a system problem, not a management problem. This is not a problem in this state for blue ribbon commissions and boards of mystics, and a governor's going to go there and turn some dials and pull some knobs, and everything's going to be right with the world. You have to completely reorder the incentives presented and the obligations imposed by these big ticket systems. One other thing I'll say, though, too, with the third-party candidates here, and I think it does expand the debate, but understand, it is very easy to wave the flag. Whatever flag you're flying, it is very easy to wave it. This is realpolitik, right? Electoral politics is a realpolitik exercise. You need candidates for governor and other offices that are just as adept at advancing the flag as they are at waving it. And so I have been in this arena for 15 years, outsider, insider, whatever. You know, there's some guys that are on the inside that are pretty good and some guys on the outside that are pretty bad. It's about the policy choices we're going to make, the principles that we articulate, and the policies that will flow from them, and then our ability with policy knowledge, political savvy, and a street fighter's mentality to actually advance the flag against the entrenched interests in this state. Thank you.
Lex Green.
Thank you. We can't afford big government, period. We've tried it. We've been trying it for years. It doesn't work. Jim Thompson tried it when he started the Build Illinois plan. Ever since then, we've been using that as an excuse to issue bonds to help pay for our government. That's right. Even when we have a balanced budget, we are deferring payments at a rate of almost $2 billion a year out into the future. If you add up the bonds that we have currently for programs that we've already paid for, they go out to the year 2040 and beyond. Now I want you to think about that. That's 30 years from now. That means that I'll be retired if I'm still alive. My kids will be almost my age. My grandchildren, who aren't even born yet, will already be in the workforce. The things that we're buying today, we're shoving off on future generations. I don't like letting the politicians control the debate on compassion, because look at what they're doing. They're using promises of something for you today, but they're stealing from our grandchildren. And that is not ethical or moral. So we have to stop that, and we need to turn it around. I do want to address the fact that I am not an independent but third-party candidate, and I think that I can be elected. And I say this because there's a lot of people, I'm involved with the Tea Party movement a lot of people saying, well, we'd vote for you, but we're afraid if we don't vote for a Republican, we'll let a Democrat in, or if we don't vote for a Democrat, we'll let a Republican in. Well, I'm telling you, now's the time. Democrats want bigger government and more taxes. The Republicans, the party that implemented the income tax in the first place, is also for subsidies and propping up businesses in the name of building prosperity. They're actually, both parties, going to drag us down. This is the perfect wave. I hear support all over the state. I guess I'm done. Thank you.
Our last speaker, Adam Andrzejewski.
Well, those Republicans that Lex references, those are the patronage Republicans that I'm running against. Debt is taxation without representation for my children and my children's children. I want to tell you a story. My father, 32 years ago, as a conservative Democrat, stood up against our neighbor in Kankakee County, George Ryan. And he ran against the entire corrupt Republican machine of Kankakee County, a machine that rivaled the Daley administration today. Good people need to stand up, and we need to control our backyards. We can't complain about Washington, D.C. or Springfield if we can't get our hands around our own communities. My family's been in Illinois for 8 generations, going back to 1848 on the family farm. We dug up the prairie grass, defended that farm for the last 8 generations, 162 years. And if we've learned anything, it is this, that Illinois is worth fighting for. And I want to tell you why I fight. I fight to bring the principles of an Illinoisan from a small town in Dixon, and I toured his boyhood home just last week, Ronald Reagan, and I want to bring those principles into my Republican Party in Illinois who missed the Reagan Revolution. I am pro-life. I'm pro-family. I'll veto civil unions. I'm pro-Second Amendment. I'll sign concealed carry. I'm a fiscal conservative. No new taxes. We need to cut spending. We need to understand our shared Republican history. It was Ogilvy, Republican, who instituted the income tax, Thompson, who hiked it, Edgar, who codified it, and Ryan, who raised 1,000 fees. And the next Republican governor to hike your income taxes will destroy the brand of this party for the next generation. I'm endorsed by the National Taxpayers Union. No new taxes. I'm endorsed by former state senator Patrick O'Malley, who ran against Jim Ryan, one of my competitors, who's leading in this race. And he knows him well, and he endorsed my campaign. I'm also endorsed by Nobel Prize winner Lech Walesa, who started Solidarity and was friends with Ronald Reagan, Pope John Paul II, who brought freedom and liberty to Poland. And he's coming here on Friday, and I encourage all of you to come to the fundraiser at the Union League Club, $75 at noon on Friday, and meet Lech Walesa, freedom fighter. He's coming to Illinois to help us.
Thank you, Adam. I would like to close this debate, probably for a minute or two here. And I first of all want to thank all these candidates whom I've gotten to know personally. Lex is a little new to the crowd here. I'm looking forward to knowing you better. But with freeandequal.org, freeandequal.org, we're a non-for-profit. We have a separate entity called Free and Equal Inc., a 501c4, of which we've helped Green Party get established today here in Illinois. We've helped other candidates on this panel get on the ballot, and we look forward to helping other candidates that will be collecting signatures, of which the threshold is 25,000 signatures for third parties and independents versus only 5,000 for Republicans and Democrats here in Illinois. It's truly unfair, one of the most restrictive ballot access states in the United States. And Free and Equal is proud to be here today. I would also like to, again, thank the 5 organizations co-sponsoring this event. We could not have done this without you. Wonderful. Gary Franchi, really making a historical debate here, a live feed to restore the Republic. This is something that we anticipate hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people viewing in the future. I would also like to thank the press that showed up here in the back. You know who you are, even affiliate, I think, from the New York Times. I mean, just really some great stuff, people coming out here. I want to thank all of you back here for truly representing the people, truly. And you are different from amongst the rest out there, all of you back there. Just real briefly, I know the night is almost over, 9:30, 2-hour debate. I just want you guys to know I've been in ballot access for over 10 years. 98, my dad was a libertarian candidate that ran for governor that was wrongfully knocked off the ballot because of George Ryan. We, as I mentioned before, know where he is today. Jim Tobin, president of the National Taxpayers United of Illinois. He runs the largest tax-fighting organization in Illinois. I'm an independent, but he has taught me the utmost integrity. And though my dad is not here today, I thank him so much for teaching me to not be bought out by the system, to remain that integrity. I've seen the Republicans, I've seen groups so many times offer him limitless amounts of cash, and he laughs at them and lives his middle-class life. And I truly appreciate my dad for that, and I wish he was here today. I previously worked as the National Ballot Access Coordinator for Ralph Nader in 2008, succeeding in getting him on the ballot in 45 states plus D.C. I'm now running as a Libertarian candidate for Secretary of State. I'll be seeking endorsements across the political spectrum. I'm truly all partisan. I want to set the precedent of what a candidate that actually gets into office, what they should do. I want to set that precedent nationwide, and I do believe that there are many gentlemen on this panel today that could do the same thing. So one other thing I wanted to mention, Free and Equal has grown a lot. We started our fundraising last November. In 2 months, we raised over $100,000. We are growing. We have organized, in 2008, we organized the presidential debate at the Mayflower, which was on C-SPAN nationwide. University of Nevada, vice presidential debate. All local affiliates, television stations came. Last October, all the gentlemen here, Lexa wasn't around at that time, but they participated in our debate in DuQuoin, Illinois. They are true candidates representing the people. That reached out to over 100,000 people. ABC showed up, the Southern. It was wonderful, and it was great to see these guys really, though some have different issues, Rich Whitney, wow. You know, it's awesome, like just meshing together and really making it work in a real debate. So I'd like to end with, if you could, it would be great. All these debates that we hold are grassroots. People out there, you looking today, watching nationwide, thank you. Thank you from DC to Connecticut to California for supporting our organization. The people here today being here, spreading the word is what we need. We are planning on holding another debate after the primary. For those of you who don't know, we almost had Mr. Dan Rather moderate this debate, and he has been very supportive of our efforts in the past and hopefully again in the future for the primary. So I wish all these gentlemen the best of luck. If you can support us today, we have a donation box in the back. We have books from Teresa Amato, Grand Illusion. Oh, some wonderful stuff about ballot access. She's the former campaign manager of Ralph Nader, 2000-2004. And also James Bennett, libertarian professor from George Mason University, wrote a book back there, Not Invited to the Party. So $50 for a signed copy, $30 for a book. Any donation you can make would be great. And most importantly, just having you here today is invaluable in itself. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Pleasure, Randy. I could hear you quite well. You didn't need a microphone.
Well, I was fixing to cut loose, but they said, go ahead. So, it's good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. Take care.
Stealing your water.